Good morning to everybody. Today I am going to give the explanation of the portrait of Lady Khushwant Singh written by Khushwant Singh. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for 20 years that I had been known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty and even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. No one can believe that she was young, she was pretty and even had a husband. No one can believe. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and loose fitting clothes. His long white beard covered the base part of his chest and looked at least 100 years of old. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or children. He does not look that he has a wife or children. He looked as if he has lots of grandchildren. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. His grandfather's portrait hung above in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and his long white beard covered the base part of his chest and looked at least 100 years of old. He did not look the sort of person who could have a wife or children. He looked as if he has the lots of grandchildren. As for my grandmother, being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. No one can believe that he has a husband or in the young she was the pretty. No one can believe. She often told us of the games and she used to play as a child. That seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like fables and prophets. She used to tell us. It means that she says her the illogical and undignified. She used to tell him the illogical stories and also what games she play as a child. And she had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Always been short and fat, slightly bent. Her face was crisscross of wrinkle, old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older and had stayed at same age for 20 years. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. She hobbled about the house in spotless white with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop and other telling the beads of rosary. Here hobbled means that the always moving in the house in spotless ways and resting her waist to balance her stoop, and the balance the stoop means the she was slightly bent to balance it, and other telling her silver locks was scattered untidily over pale puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in the audible prayer. Audible prayer means the no one can hear. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape on mountain, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. Here, an expanse of pure white means that set of happiness and the satisfaction. My grandmother and I were good friends. My parents lived with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. She used to wake me up in morning and get me ready for school. She helped her to ready her for the school. She said her morning prayer in monotonous sing song while she bathed and dressed me in hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. I listened because I love her voice but never bothered her. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, a teeny earthen ink pot, and a red pen, tie them all in a bundle, and hand it to me. After a breakfast of thick stale chapati, here stale chapati means the previous day's chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it. We went to the school. She carried several stale chapatis with her for village dogs. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer while the children sat in rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or prayer in a chorus. My grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. This time, the village dog would meet us at temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting with each other for the chapatis we threw to them. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city they sent for us, that was the turning point in our friendship. Although we shared the same room, but my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in motor bus. There was no dogs in streets, and she took two fading sparrows in courtyard of our city house. As the year rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came, we shared the same room, but my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in motor bus. There was no dogs in streets, and she took two fading sparrows in courtyard of our city house. As the year rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her the English words and also little things of Western science and learning, law of gravity, Archimedes principle, the world being around. This made her unhappy. She does not. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. She was very disturbed. To her, music had a lewd association, means no value. It was like the monopoly of harlots and beggars and not meant for the gentle folk. She said nothing, but her silence meant the disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. When I went to the university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel spinning and reciting prayer. Only in afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed some sparrows while she sat in veranda breaking the bread into little bits. Hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirping. Some came and perched on her legs, others on her shoulders, some even sat on her head. She smiled, but never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest half hour of day for her. When I decided to go abroad for further study, I was sure my grandmother would be very upset. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age, one never tell. She, but my grandmother could but she was not even sentimental. She came to leave me at railway station but did not show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer, her mind was lost in prayer, her fingers was busy telling the bits of rosary. Silently she kissed my forehead and I left. I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. But that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. She was looked as for 20 years before and also now also. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with us with whom she fed longer with frivolous rebukes. Frivolous rebukes means the light-hearted scoldings. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She did not want to pray, and she collected the neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. For several hours, she thumbed the sagging skins of dilapidated drum and sang of homecoming of warrior. We had to persuade her to stop, avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. The next morning she was taken ill. It was the mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only a few hours, the close of her last chapter, did not want to pray. She was not going to waste any talking to us. We protested, but she ignored our all protest. She lay peacefully in the bed, praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and rosary frame fell from her fingers. A peaceful pallor, pallor means pale appearance, spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. We lifted her off and as is customary laid her on the ground and covered her with the red shroud. After a few hours of mourning, here mourning means sadness, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. In the evening he went to her room with a crude stretcher to take to her to be cremated. He was in was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in courtyard all over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff wrapped in the red shroud. Thousands of sparrows scattered. There was no chirruping. We felt sorry. She broke into little crumbs the way my grandmother and threw it to them. They took no notice. When we carried the grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumb into dustbin. If you like this video, please subscribe, share and recommend us to your friends.